Welcome back to MHS, Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you turn to these videos as a gentle way to unwind and ease into sleep. So, before you drift off tonight, could you help me with a small favor? Just leave a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. My goal is to hit around 200 likes within the first 24 hours. Simple actions like these help YouTube appreciate the content and spread the show to more people. Now then, let's dive into tonight's horror stories. I never thought a regular night shift would turn into a life or death escape. I'm Cassie, and I was 22 at the time, working part-time at a Dollar Tree store on East Main Street. I usually worked the evening shift because the pay was better, and I worked with Amanda. She was 2 years older than me with platinum blonde hair. Amanda was pretty private. She rarely talked about her family, only occasionally mentioning that she had to be independent from an early age. That particular shift, I remember it was around mid-August. I was doing inventory in the home goods section, while Amanda was tidying up the cash register. When the door chime rang, a man walked in. My immediate impression was how incredibly tall he was. He walked straight to the back of the store, turning left into the toy aisle. I assumed he was looking to buy something, so I didn't pay much more attention. A little later, I finished my task and headed towards the front counter. "Where did that customer go?" I asked. Amanda looked up, confused. "Which customer?" When I described the man in the black leather jacket, Amanda looked up from the register, bewildered. "I'm sorry, I didn't notice anyone come in." Just then, a rustling sound came from the aisles. We looked in that direction, then at each other, understanding that the customer was still inside. Browse. We finished our end-of-day tasks while waiting for him. Amanda started counting the cash in the register following the closing procedure, and I went to rearrange items that customers had moved. At 9 p.m. the store was supposed to close. We hadn't heard any more sounds from the aisles. Not sure if the customer was still inside, we decided to check. But strangely, he was nowhere to be found. "Maybe he left when we were busy," Amanda said. This was a bit odd, but not impossible. Perhaps he had slipped out quietly while we were focused on our work. We decided to complete the closing procedure. I continued turning off lights in the remaining sections while Amanda finished counting the money. The store was now only lit by emergency lights and the lights at the checkout counter. As I was in the back of the store, a strange noise came from the direction of the storage room. I stood about 10 yards from the storage room. "Amanda!" I called out, but there was no answer. I waited a few more seconds, but still silence. Thinking it was a mouse or something falling, I walked towards the main area of the store. When I reached the counter, Amanda wasn't there. The chair she had just been sitting in was still warm, and her purse and car keys were still in the drawer. I was a little confused, so I called out loudly, "Amanda, where are you?" My voice echoed in the quiet space. I walked around the store, slowly heading towards the back storage room. As I walked, I called out Amanda's name a few more times, but still no answer. Just then, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out, and a message from Amanda appeared on the screen. "Get out of the store now." I froze, incredibly confused. The phone vibrated again. A second message from Amanda. "He went into the back room and tried to attack me. I ran, but he's still in there." My body went numb. All the pieces started clicking into place in my head. That tall man hadn't left the store at all. He had been hiding somewhere, waiting for the right moment when the store was empty and dark. I slowly backed towards the main door, each step feeling like it was weighted with lead, my eyes still fixed on the dark hallway leading to the back. My heart pounded wildly in my chest. Just as I turned to bolt, a loud noise erupted from the back. I spun around, and a tall, dark figure lunged forward. In the flickering fluorescent light, what he held in his hand became clear. A large knife. There was something dark on the blade. I turned and sprinted towards the main door with all my strength. He lunged after me at terrifying speed. My reflection showed him swinging the knife like a weapon of death. In the very next second, the blade grazed my left arm, tearing my shirt and leaving a deep, long cut. A searing pain erupted and warm blood flowed down, but the pain only made me run faster. I shoved the door open and burst outside. Immediately, I turned back and locked the door. From inside, violent pounding on the door echoed, accompanied by threatening snarls like a caged beast. I pulled out my phone with a blood-soaked hand, dialing 911. Unexpectedly, before I could even make the call, the police arrived along with an ambulance, sirens blaring. My wound was quickly bandaged. I pointed at the store and recounted everything to the officers, my voice broken with shock. They surrounded the store, and it wasn't long before they let him out, his hands cuffed tightly behind his back. Once he was in the police car, I urgently asked the officers about Amanda, my co-worker. She texted me a warning and then disappeared. Is she hurt? A middle-aged officer looked at me. We found her about 20 minutes ago. She had collapsed by the roadside, probably right after she made the call to us. She'd lost blood and has been taken to the hospital. A wave of relief washed over me. Amanda was safe, and thanks to her quick thinking, the police had arrived in time. The next day, once Amanda was conscious and stable, I visited her at the hospital. I asked Amanda about what happened in the storage room. She was silent for a long time, then sighed. It was my brother. Michael. Shock was clear on my face when I heard this. Her brother? The one she had never mentioned? Michael abused me since I was little, both physically and mentally. A few years ago, I reported everything to the police. Michael went to jail. Amanda turned her face to look out the hospital window, her voice slightly choked. He just got out of prison last week. No one in the family wants to help him financially or with a place to stay. He blames me, saying I ruined his life. Amanda closed her eyes, as if trying to push away horrifying images. I tried to keep my past a secret, start a new life, but he still found me. I hugged Amanda tightly, trying not to cry with her. 2 weeks later, Amanda returned to work. We still worked late shifts together, but now with at least one more coworker, and management had installed more security cameras and an alarm system. Michael was convicted of aggravated assault and using a dangerous weapon. Now, I've graduated and have a job in my field. Amanda and I are still good friends. Some decisions in life, when I look back on them, still make me shiver. The decision to refuse a ride to a strange woman that night probably saved my life. I'm Katie, 26 years old, living alone in Albany, New York. It was an evening after my shift, and I stopped at Dollar Tree to buy a few essentials. Just as I stepped out of my car, a voice behind me startled me. "Excuse me, could you give me a ride?" I turned around and saw a woman, about 30 years old, with disheveled hair and a baggy shirt. She stared at me, her hands clasped in front of her chest. I froze for a few seconds, recalling her very strained voice and seeing her fingers slightly trembling. "Sorry, I can't," I replied briefly, turning and walking away immediately, but I couldn't help feeling a little uneasy as I entered the store. I went inside Dollar Tree and started picking out what I needed. As I was standing by the food aisle, I felt someone approach. Turning around, I saw the same woman from earlier. She had followed me inside. This made me feel uncomfortable. "I really need a ride." This time her voice was more urgent, almost pleading. When I looked directly at her face, the unease in my stomach began to turn into genuine worry. Her eyes were unusually wide. Her face, though seemingly normal, had clenched jaw muscles, as if she was trying to suppress something. She kept darting her eyes back and forth, not focusing on any single point. My gut told me something was very wrong with this person. "I'm sorry, but I can't help you," I said, then moved to another aisle, hoping she would understand and leave me alone. She didn't follow me anymore. I breathed a sigh of relief, trying to shop quickly, pay, and leave the store as soon as possible. I opened my car trunk to put my shopping bags away when I heard footsteps behind me. I froze, and my heart started pounding faster. Please. I turned around. She was very close now. Her face was completely different from the previous 2 times. Her eyes were wide and glaring as if they wanted to burn through me, and blue veins prominently bulged on her forehead and neck. Her hands trembled violently and clenched into fists, her knuckles white. Her breathing was rapid and irregular. At this point, I was absolutely sure she was not normal. The confusion in my mind now became real fear. I needed to get out of there immediately. I said, I can't. If you need help, I can call the police for you. I tried to keep my voice calm. Her reaction shocked me. Her face suddenly contorted, and her mouth opened wide as she shrieked a string of obscenities. Then she started punching her own head, her fingernails clawing at her cheeks, leaving red marks. You don't understand. I need to go home. I need to go home right now. I backed away, my heart thumping. Even though I felt guilty for not helping someone in distress, my instinct told me this was not the time to be kind. I quickly opened my car door and jumped inside, my hands trembling as I fumbled the key into the ignition. A thud startled me. She was trying to open the back door, yanking hard on the handle. Open the door! Open the door now! I hit the lock button. Through the rearview mirror, I saw her pick up a large rock from a nearby flower bed. The sound of the rock hitting the car's body was very loud. I didn't dare look back. I just quickly started the car and drove away. Once I was on the main road, I finally dared to look back in the mirror. She was still standing in the middle of the parking lot, rock still in hand, watching my car disappear into the night. As soon as I got home, I called the police to report what had just happened. They took down my statement and sent someone to Dollar Tree to investigate. 2 days later, the police called me back to update me on the investigation. The woman, named Lisa, had been arrested at another grocery store in the area on charges of property damage and assault. She was a severe addict with no fixed address. The police said she had a history of violence when denied help. You did the right thing by not giving her a ride. In that state, she could have done anything, the officer said. Hearing these words, I truly realized how close I had come to danger. If I had decided to be kind and given her a ride, what could have happened then? She could have attacked me, stolen my car, or even worse. I will never forget the lesson of trusting my gut. Sometimes refusing to help isn't cruel, it's self-preservation. I haven't been able to sleep for almost a month now. I can still feel the cold blade against my neck and his crazy eyes. I'm Stella, 26 years old. I'm a nurse living in New York. It was a Sunday evening in late August. I had just finished my shift at the hospital and was driving back to my small apartment in Queens. The next day was my day off, so I planned to have a relaxing evening with a few movies. There was a Dollar Tree on my way home, so I decided to stop by for some snacks. The store was deserted. I didn't see a single soul, not even a cashier. I thought they must be busy, so I walked along the aisles, quickly grabbing a few items, then headed to the checkout. But the cashier still hadn't appeared. I decided to wait a little longer. Just then, footsteps echoed from the back of the store. A man walked out. He was carrying a fairly large black plastic bag and wasn't wearing a uniform. When he saw me, he was clearly startled, his face suddenly tense. "Excuse me, do you work here? I need to pay for some things," I asked. He looked at me searchingly. I just work in the back in the stock room." I noticed his fingers gripping the plastic bag tightly, his knuckles white. "How long have you been here?" he asked in return. That question confused me. "Just a few minutes," I replied briefly. "Where's the cashier?" He hesitated for a second, then pointed to the back of the store. "He's in the back. I can take you there." This offer immediately put me on high alert. "No thanks." I stepped back. "I'll come back another time." His demeanor changed instantly. His face went from confused to annoyed, then angry. His small eyes stared at me with intense hostility. He mumbled something, but I couldn't hear it clearly. I turned and walked quickly towards the door. Just then, I heard the plastic bag hit the floor and the clinking of metal. I turned back and froze. He was holding a knife in his hand, a long blade stained with dark brown marks. "You're not going anywhere," he said, taking slow steps toward me. My heart pounded as if it would burst from my chest. My body was momentarily paralyzed before my survival instinct kicked in. I turned and ran towards the exit, but I wasn't fast enough. Just as my hand touched the doorknob, a strong force pulled me backward. He wrapped his arms tightly around me from behind, his left arm squeezing me, pinning my arms down, while his right hand brought the knife to my neck. "Shut up," he whispered in my ear. The cold blade pressed against my skin. "Why?" I gasped, trying not to move to prevent the blade from cutting deeper. "Because you're a witness." He squeezed me tighter. I felt the blade about to cut through my skin. At that moment, I truly accepted the worst possible outcome. Just then, gunshots echoed in the store. The explosions made my ears ring. I felt the man jerk violently. He slowly loosened his grip on me, lost his balance, and slowly fell to the floor. The knife clattered beside him. I stood there, trembling uncontrollably, unable to believe what had just happened. 2 police officers were standing at the entrance, one of their guns still pointed at the man on the floor. "Are you hurt?" A police officer ran over and asked me. I shook my head, but I couldn't speak a word. Paramedics rushed in, helped me sit down, and checked me. But before I could fully recover, I witnessed another haunting sight. 2 paramedics and a police officer were carefully bringing a body out from behind the checkout counter. The Dollar Tree blue shirt was stained red with blood, and the body had countless deep, jagged knife wounds. I immediately vomited on the spot. My body trembled so much that a nurse had to hold my shoulder tightly. I don't remember when I passed out. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room, the soft white hospital lights glaring in my eyes. A young nurse was adjusting an IV drip beside me. I heard the steady beep-beep of the heart monitor. Only then was I sure that I was still alive. The doctor said I was in severe shock and had acute stress disorder after the traumatic event. They kept me for a few days to ensure I was stable. My mom immediately flew in from another state to be with me. She didn't ask many questions. She just held my hand tightly, and I kept crying, unable to say a word. During my hospital stay, I followed the case on the news and online. An article titled, "New York Police Shoot and Kill Murder Suspect at Queens Dollar Tree Store," reported that the man was Carlos, 41 years old. He was wanted in Ohio for armed violence and had escaped from a detention center a few weeks earlier. On the night of the incident, he broke into the store through the back door and murdered the cashier to steal money. The stockroom employee luckily wasn't discovered by him. He quietly left his hiding spot and called the police. When the police arrived, I was moments away from death. They were forced to open fire. If they had been a few seconds slower, I might have been the next victim. The following weeks became a real nightmare. I couldn't sleep. I kept waking up with nightmares of the cold blade against my neck and his crazy eyes. I've been seeing a therapist and trying every day to overcome this trauma. I cherish and am grateful for life because, fortunately, I'm still alive. My name is Charles, 29 years old. My wife Maddie and I have been married for over 4 years, and she's exactly the kind of person I was looking for. Beautiful and independent. Throughout the years we've been together, we have never had any loud arguments. One evening, I came home after a stressful day at work with a new project. As soon as I stepped through the door, the smell of food made my heart skip a beat. "Maddie, I'm home. What is that delicious smell, darling?" I quickly threw my coat and briefcase onto the sofa and rushed into the kitchen. "Kebab! Awesome! Can you believe it? I was just thinking about it this afternoon." I was like a child excited to finally eat my favorite dish. Maddie smiled at me, holding out the dessert. I'm glad you like it. Let's dig in. The fatigue from a long day quickly disappeared. From that day on, Maddie gradually increased the frequency of making kebab for me, first once a week, then every day. Maddie, I'm about to get sick of the smell of this dish. Eating so much grilled food isn't good for you, you know. And how do you still have time to prepare this meal? Maddie looked at me with a somewhat awkward expression. Because it's your favorite dish. I really like it, but that was just a few weeks ago, darling. The next day, on my way home from work, I passed by a food truck selling fast food. A second later, I was startled and looked back in the rearview mirror. It was Maddie, and she seemed friendly and happy with the owner of the food truck. At that moment, I was just a bit curious, but I didn't suspect anything, and soon after, I forgot about it. One day when I got home from work, I saw Maddie watching TV in the living room. I hurried over and hugged her from behind. "I'm home, sweetheart." Maddie wrapped her arms around mine and smiled lightly. "Maddie, why?" I leaned down to sniff her shirt. "Why do you smell like kebab?" My wife stood up quickly. "Oh, I just went out to eat with Kaylee. Does the smell cling that much? Let me go change, and then we can go out for dinner." Seeing Maddie's awkwardness, I couldn't help but feel curious. On the way to the restaurant, I asked her again, "You had plans with me, yet you still went out to eat with Kaylee? What's going on?" "Does the restaurant we're going to have tiramisu on the dessert menu?" Maddie immediately interrupted and changed the subject, not even looking me in the eye. I decided not to bring it up again for the moment, but I was sure Maddie was hiding something. As time went on, she became more distant and avoided making eye contact with me. There were no more joyful dinners, laughter, or words of affection. Maddie even spent a few nights out, and according to her, she stayed at Kaylee's house, and it happened more often. The second time I caught Maddie at the food truck, she wasn't just talking. She even followed the owner into the truck. I was frozen, coming up with hundreds of questions and then answering them in every possible way, just to hold on to a bit of hope. When I got home, I waited for Maddie to return so we could have a clear conversation. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours passed, and she still hadn't come home. When I called, the phone went straight to voicemail. At that moment, I couldn't stay calm anymore. My mind was filled with all sorts of terrifying images. After waiting another 2 hours, my patience was completely gone. I rushed out of the house and ran to where the food truck had been, but it was gone. Like a madman, I ran up and down the street searching for the truck, calling Maddie hundreds of times, but I still couldn't reach her. I blamed myself for being so foolish, for leaving instead of confronting the situation and clearing things up right then and there. I was overwhelmed by despair, collapsed on the street, and before I knew it, the sky had already turned to dawn. The truck reappeared and parked in its usual spot on the street. I stumbled towards it, repeatedly shouting Maddie's name. "The food isn't ready to be served yet, sir," the owner of the truck said, smiling faintly. I rushed forward, grabbing his shirt tightly and yelled, "Where is Maddie? Where is she?" But that bastard just looked at me and smiled without answering. "Maddie! Maddie! Where are you?" I searched for her, thinking there might be a secret room inside the truck. The owner of the truck didn't stop me, didn't shout at me. He just stood there, watching my every move, and smiled. In the kitchen area, I found jewelry and clothes that I was certain belonged to Maddie. The feeling of betrayal clouded my mind, and I couldn't control my actions. I rushed over and punched that bastard in the face. He laughed even harder when I did that. Exhausted and with my hands covered in red, I left in utter despair. For the next 3 days, Maddie disappeared, and I couldn't get in touch with her. I'd reported to the police, and an investigation was launched with the search team looking for Maddie, while other officers kept a 24/7 watch on the truck owner. He continued to sell food with a bruised face as if nothing had happened, and there were no suspicious actions from him. My testimony, along with Maddie's belongings found in the kitchen, wasn't enough to convict him. How could a normal person disappear so mysteriously, leaving no trace or clues behind? Nearly a month after Maddie disappeared, that morning when the news broadcast reported, a serious food poisoning incident occurred with 28 people in Coral Gables, Miami. After being admitted to the hospital for treatment, all 28 individuals were diagnosed by doctors with blood parasitic infections. After testing the leftover food in their stomachs, the doctors were shocked to report the food they consumed contained human DNA. After gathering information from the patients and their families, they all stated that they had eaten kebab from a food truck on the street. About a month ago, at the same food truck, the mysterious disappearance of the young woman named Maddie occurred.
I'm Colleen, 25. I currently have a steady job in accounting. I met Cameron through a mutual friend. We quickly fell in love just a month after meeting. Partly because I was smitten by Cameron's good looks, and partly because he's so warm, genuine, and thoughtful. I even thought about marrying Cameron just 2 weeks into dating. The first 3 months of our relationship were definitely as sweet as a fairy tale romance. Cameron had a unique hobby that he was really passionate about. My 29-year-old boyfriend was really into fairy tales for kids at heart. He spent hours every day reading books and watching movies about fairy tale worlds. There were stories Cameron had read hundreds of times, knowing every detail, every word, every comma. I respected his hobby, especially since I'm a big bookworm myself. We usually went to the bookstore together once a week, for it was a good date spot. By the 4th month of our relationship, Cameron started showing some unusual irritability. Cameron yelled at me for picking up a fork before he sat down at the table. He constantly complained and got annoyed when I didn't put my glass on the coaster. I wasn't allowed to buy or eat anything that could make a mess or any food that made noise when chewed. Cameron, in particular, wouldn't come into the house unless the host came out to say hi and invite him in. He also insisted that I had to do the same. It would be very rude and even dangerous to do that on your own. The way Cameron laid down a set of rules for me was like a princess learning etiquette in a fairy tale, but the way he reacted when I didn't do things exactly right was like someone losing their mind. I started feeling incredibly uncomfortable in this relationship. I broke up with him several times, but he'd always kneel and beg for forgiveness, promising he'd change. He would say sorry for his foolishness, and I kept falling for it, over and over. But Cameron's controlling and irritating behavior just kept getting worse every day. It really took a toll on my mental health. One day, Cameron invited me over to his parents' house for dinner. My parents want to meet you because I told them you're as beautiful as Sleeping Beauty in the forest. I agreed to go to Cameron's parents' house. I thought maybe I could figure out how to deal with Cameron's behavior after getting some advice from his mom. The next day, Cameron took me shopping for a dress to wear for the dinner. I told Cameron it wasn't necessary since I already had plenty of clothes. A dinner at my boyfriend's house didn't need to be fancy. No, you need to look like a princess. My parents will really appreciate it. Appreciate? I repeated what Cameron said and stressed it when I saw him smiling. Don't be so harsh with your attitude and tone. It'll make you seem really rude. I didn't bother to respond to Cameron. and just stared out the car window. I wasn't sure if it was the right choice to accept or not. As Cameron said, he took me to a store that had dresses just like the ones fairy tale princesses wear. Without letting me say anything, Cameron had me try on a bunch of dresses with layers and layers of heavy fabric. In the end, he brilliantly picked the most uncomfortable and heavy one for me to wear. I should have just left and ended it right there. I don't know why I have such incredible patience and endurance. Or was I just being stupid? After buying the princess dress, Cameron took me to a makeup shop. After sitting still for 3 hours, I looked at myself in the mirror and was amazed at how beautiful I looked. I didn't think I'd look as beautiful as Princess Aurora. Let's head home now and brush up on some more manners. Cameron's words felt like a hard slap to me. Cameron then quickly pulled me away. That night, instead of taking me to his parents' house, Cameron called a taxi for me. I'll go home and get everything ready with my parents to welcome you. I could see the taxi driver's eyes glancing at the rearview mirror every 5 seconds. I struggled to get out of the taxi in that heavy dress. Cameron's parents' house is a wooden house, and it's got a pretty fairy tale vibe to it. I walked up to the door to ring the bell and saw a note stuck above it. Hey, my parents and I need to step out for a bit. It won't be long. The door was slightly open, so I walked in. I needed to sit down right away because my feet were going numb from the high heels. The inside of the house was pretty cozy. I sat down at a small wooden table and looked around for a bit. I was about to suffocate in this corset after wearing it for nearly 6 hours. I couldn't even tell if I was lying down or sitting, as long as it was comfortable though. I hadn't eaten anything since breakfast until that evening. Seeing the plate of cookies on the table, I grabbed one to have before dinner. Crumbs fell everywhere, so I quickly stood up, brushed them off, and went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. I drank my water while checking out the kitchen utensils. They were irresistibly cute. I heard some noise from outside, so I quickly ran to the living room and sat down, thinking Cameron and his parents had come back. But no one was there. I sat and waited for a few more minutes, and then I suddenly heard a growl. Actually, it sounded like someone was trying to growl like a hungry lion. I stood up and looked in the direction where I thought the growl was coming from. A very unpleasant creaking sound came from the door of a room, and at the same time, it slowly opened. I was startled when 2 people in bear mascot costumes popped out from inside. Their faces were partially visible, but I couldn't see them clearly. They slowly approached me, still growling. I was really confused. I asked multiple times who they were, but they just kept up their strange behavior. I quickly ran towards the door, but another person in a bear mascot costume blocked my way. Cameron? I gasped when I saw Cameron's face peeking out from inside. What is the meaning of this?
You're going to be punished for not passing the challenge. You walked into a stranger's house without knocking. You ate cookies and drank water without asking. I especially don't accept your sitting posture.
The 2 people who just came out of that room were Cameron's parents. What on earth was going on? I was the invited guest for dinner. Why was my personality being tested? At my limit, I took off the crown from my head, threw it at Cameron, and shouted. Immediately, Cameron and his parents started roaring like they had lost their minds. They threatened to tear me apart, like the wicked characters in fairy tales who got their comeuppance. The eyes of those 3 were red and veiny, and their behavior was completely out of the ordinary. I was terrified and bolted out of the house. I took off my painful high heels, ran as fast as I could, and called the police. Now I understood why princesses always seem so slow and useless in emergencies like this. The dress was too heavy and cumbersome. Cameron's rough hands grabbed my hair and yanked me back. Luckily, the police arrived just in time to rescue me. I was in a terrible state, with torn clothes and bite marks all over my arms and calves. Cameron's family was taken to a mental health facility for treatment and detention. I was in shock and had to be hospitalized to have the bite marks carefully monitored. I was haunted by images of princesses, castles, and all that stuff. What if the police hadn't come in time? Would those people eat me alive?
I am Marie, 28 years old, and I have been living alone in the city of Fresno for nearly 8 years. I never thought that working at the bakery counter in a Walmart supermarket could turn into a lifelong obsession. I had been working here for over 3 years, starting every day early in the morning when the store was still quiet. It was a routine job with flour, ovens, the delicious smell of fresh bread, and brief conversations with co-workers. Everything changed the day Gim Arcor disappeared. Jim was a young girl. She was beautiful, quick-witted, always volunteered for the night shift, and was ready to work extra hours at any time. No one at the bakery worked harder than Jim. She once said she needed money to help her family, that she couldn't afford to fail. She was always on time, never missed a day without notice. And yet one morning, she didn't show up for her shift. At first, everyone thought maybe Jim was sick or had an urgent matter to deal with. But when the manager called and no one answered, a strange feeling began to creep in. I remember last week she seemed more stressed than usual. When we were cleaning up after our shift, Jim confided in me about a problem that had been worrying her. "Marie," she whispered, still wiping down the oven, "I think someone is trying to hurt me." I stopped mid-action and looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" "I am not sure," Jim sighed. "But Brad always looks at me with these strange eyes. Last week I found my locker had been broken into, and yesterday I saw him hanging around, even though it wasn't his shift." Brad was the night shift manager, a middle-aged man who was quiet with a cold stare. He had only started working here a few months ago. I nervously told Jim to report it to the manager. Jim shook her head helplessly since Brad was the manager, and she had no concrete evidence. I placed my hand on her shoulder to comfort her. "If there's anything that makes you feel unsafe, tell me, okay?" Jim smiled weakly and nodded. "Thanks. Maybe I'm just overthinking." Nearly a week after the incident, no one knew where Gim had gone. Her family had no news either. The police were called in. They questioned all the staff, searched for information, but there were no traces to be found. A few days after Gim's disappearance, life seemed to go back to normal, or at least, people tried to make themselves believe that. I still went to work every day, still spread dough on trays, still heard the oven crackling as if nothing had happened. Everything became eerily silent, as if no one dared to mention Gim's name. We kept working, but the worry lingered in every glance. I couldn't help but notice that Brad seemed unnervingly calm after Jim disappeared. While all of us were tense and worried, he remained composed, as if nothing had happened. Sometimes I even caught him smiling to himself while checking the oven, the one Gim used to handle. Then, that morning, the first nightmare began. A middle-aged woman stormed up to the bakery counter, her face flushed with anger. She slammed a bag of bread onto the counter, her voice sharp with frustration. "Do you know what's in here?" I slowly looked down at the bag of bread. On the outside, it looked like any other baguette, golden brown, still giving off that familiar, fragrant baked smell. But when the woman tore open the bread, inside was a dark patch, and before I could process it, the customer pulled out a long brown hair. I heard murmurs from the people around us. The noise rose, as if a crowd was about to burst into chaos. The manager quickly rushed over, forcing a tight smile in an attempt to calm the customer. He hurriedly tried to come up with an explanation. "Sorry, ma'am, this is definitely an accident. We'll check the baking process to make sure this doesn't happen again." I just stood there trembling, my mind spinning with one thought. The hair, it looked so much like Jim's. That evening, I sat curled up on the old couch, a thin blanket draped over my shoulders. The TV buzzed in the quiet room, filling the emptiness of a lonely night after a long shift. I held a cup of water, taking small sips to ease the fatigue building in my body. Today had been long. I tried to push aside the swirling thoughts about Jim, the hair and the bread, the strange feelings that had been haunting me these past few days. But then, a news headline jolted me back to reality. Fresno police are investigating a horrifying incident. A customer at Walmart discovered a human finger in a loaf of bread purchased from the store's bakery. The cup in my hand slipped, the glass hitting the floor with a crash, the water spilling onto the carpet. My whole body froze, my eyes glued to the TV screen. Currently, DNA tests are underway to identify the victim. I gasped, my cold hands gripping the arm of the chair. The finger, it couldn't be. A wave of disgust surged from deep within me, making me want to vomit. I tried to find a reasonable explanation. Could it have been an accident? A sick joke from someone? An unusual mishap in production? But no scenario made sense. Because I had touched those loaves, I had packaged them with these hands. I had placed them on the shelf to sell, neatly, cleanly, at a ridiculously low price. And now, a part of someone's body had been in it. A piece of someone had been crushed, mixed into the dough, baked golden in the industrial oven, and then wrapped up in a clean plastic bag. Guilt welled up in my chest, choking me. Was I an accomplice? I had touched it. I had placed it on the shelf, unknowingly inviting customers to buy that disgusting thing. I tossed and turned in bed, rolling from side to side, unable to shake the horrific images from my head. The finger in the bread, the hair tangled in the soft filling, the oven that had been running all night. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me into darkness, but it wasn't peace. I found myself standing in the Walmart bakery. Everything was unnervingly silent. There were no machines running, no workers chatting, no bread puffing up in the oven. No more buttery smells, no more warmth from the fresh-baked trays. I slowly walked forward, each step echoing in the empty space. The silence felt unnatural, as if the whole world had stopped. Then, my gaze stopped at the industrial oven. I didn't understand why I felt scared, but an uneasy feeling began to spread through my body. Suddenly, something started to ooze from the oven's door. A thick, dark liquid slowly dripped down onto the white-tiled floor, creating long, winding streaks. I stared at it, trying to reassure myself that it was just strawberry jam, that maybe someone had spilled an ingredient. But then the foul, metallic smell hit me. I gasped for air, feeling my body freeze, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. I wanted to look away, to run, but some invisible force kept me rooted to the spot. The oven door slowly opened. Inside, amid the charred metal and ash, was Jim. Her body was burned, with patches of skin peeling away to reveal the charred flesh beneath. Her hair was no longer soft, only scorched clumps sticking to her distorted face. Her eyes were wide open, staring straight at me. Her mouth hung open, as if trying to scream. I stepped back, but she began to move. Jim lifted her arm, blackened and ulcerated, pointing directly at me. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. Then her voice echoed, not through sound, but through a whisper that reverberated in my mind. "I'm still here." I jolted awake, drenched in sweat, my breath rapid as if I had been submerged underwater. I woke up with dark circles under my eyes and my body exhausted after almost no sleep. My stomach twisted as I remembered the horrific nightmare. Jim in the oven, her burned body, her eyes staring at me. But I reassured myself that it was just a dream. A crazy dream brought on by my mind, haunted by Jim's disappearance and the terrifying news last night. I didn't even dare to check my phone or turn on the TV. I didn't want to hear any more news. When I entered Walmart, the atmosphere was eerily strange. People were gathered in small groups, whispering to each other, their faces all marked with a sense of shock. My heart pounded heavily, each beat hard to breathe with. A bad feeling crept into my cells. Then I heard a sentence that made my whole world crumble. The police have confirmed, it's Jim. My legs felt weak. I leaned against the bakery counter to steady myself, but the dizziness in my head didn't fade. The finger in the bread, it was Jim's. The air in the supermarket seemed to thicken, making it hard to breathe. Everything in the bakery, trays, flour, freshly baked loaves, all twisted in my eyes. The industrial oven was dismantled shortly after. Walmart closed for several weeks for the investigation, but no one knew the true story. A part of me wanted to believe it was just a terrible mistake, that no one could be cruel enough to do something like that. But the rest of me couldn't believe it. I no longer work at Walmart. Every time I step into a supermarket, every time I see a fresh loaf of bread, I hear Jim. Not a nightmare, not a hallucination, but a haunting whisper that echoes from the deepest parts of my mind. I'm still here. Almost a year has passed since that horrific day. I moved to another city, started a new job at a small bakery, trying to rebuild my life. But the memories of Jim, of Walmart, of those horrifying loaves of bread, still cling to me. I can't stop thinking about Brad, the man with the cold eyes and strange behavior. After the incident, he disappeared too. The police questioned all the staff, including Brad, but there was not enough evidence to charge anyone. But I know. Deep down, I know something is wrong with Brad. Jim's warning about him following her, the strange look when the hair was found in the bread, and his sudden disappearance after the incident, everything is just too coincidental. Was Jim's case really an accident, or was it a crime too cleverly concealed?
At 3 a.m, the phone woke me up. I looked at the number on the screen. It felt weird, but kind of familiar. I answered the phone all groggy, like, "Hello?" There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then I heard a little girl's clear voice. "Please help me." I was shocked, put the phone down, and checked the number again. It was definitely familiar. I asked, kind of worried, "Hey, little girl, what's your name?" "Christy." A name I'd never heard before. "Where are you? How'd you get my number?" "I'm in a basement. A guy brought me here and said this is gonna be my new home." I knew I had to call the police right away, but I couldn't find the other phone I was using. Luckily, there was a landline in the room, so I used that. I put my phone on speaker so the operator could get what was going on. I told the operator, "Please listen up." I asked softly, "Hey, Christy, you still there?" "Yes." I asked, "You said a guy brought you to the basement. Can you describe what it looks like around you?" "It's dark and smells kind of fishy." "Do you remember what the guy looked like?" "I'm not sure, but he had a brown beard and smelled like booze." When saying that, little Christy started crying, totally panicked and scared. "Christy, it's gonna be okay. Police are on the way. Just chill out," I said to comfort her. To help Christy feel better, I asked her more questions. "Why do you even have a phone to call me?" "That guy gave it to me. I opened it, saw just one phone number inside, and hit call." Why does he have my number? I thought.
really trying to remember who this number belonged to, but couldn't.
Sir, am I gonna die here?
Christy sobbed. No way, Christy. Police are on their way. You'll be safe. Suddenly, there were some long beeps, and then Christy's line went dead. I quickly called back, but the phone wouldn't connect. I was all confused and anxious, not sure what to do next. Suddenly, I heard the police outside, so I rushed to open the door. We figured out where the girl was calling from and where your house is, Mr. Smith, using the phone signal. I was blown away when I heard what the police said. No way! Are you guys sure? I was totally confused and couldn't wrap my head around it. Please cooperate so we can search your place, Mr. Smith. The policeman showed me a search warrant. Even though it was annoying, I just went along with it. Are you okay? An officer asked me, looking pretty serious, with his hand resting on his gun. Oh yeah, I guess. I'm not really awake yet, I think. Mr. Smith, just come do what we need you to do, another officer said. Right after that, 2 policemen took me to the basement and told me to unlock it. It took me forever to remember where I stashed the key, and that made the officers kind of frustrated. They thought I was trying to resist. I was totally spaced out and didn't know what was going on until the basement door opened. The scene was just horrifying. There was blood everywhere. There was a girl's body, about 10 years old, with a bunch of cuts all over, and her Barbie clothes were all torn up and didn't even look the same anymore. The girl was holding a phone with my picture as the wallpaper. That was the second phone I'd been searching for. They cuffed me right away, and I couldn't take it anymore, so I just dropped to my knees. After the police checked me out, I realized I smelled like booze, and there was blood all over my face and clothes. My bed sheets and pillows were stained with that nasty stuff. It hadn't dried yet, and it was still bright red. What the hell did I just do? I never thought my chill life would one day take such a terrifying turn. It was this gloomy fall day. My parents were out at some conference, and I was home alone, way out near the woods. That evening, I swung by the closest gas station after hanging out at my best friend's place. The dim neon lights made the place feel creepy. There was a guy standing by the gas station while I was filling up my car, his face hidden under a low baseball cap. He had on a bulky, dull brown coat, and I could feel his eyes on me the whole time. As I snapped the gas cap shut, the guy walked up and asked how to get to the interstate. His voice was low, not really threatening, but definitely not friendly either. I gave him directions, being polite but quick about it. As I turned to head out, a chill ran down my spine. Driving home, I noticed a car behind me, its headlights way closer than usual. At first, I figured it was just another car going the same way, but every time I sped up or slowed down, it kept the same exact distance. When I turned onto the dirt road toward home, the car suddenly stopped and its headlights went out. I glanced in the rearview mirror, but all I could see was darkness swallowing everything up. I tried telling myself I was just being paranoid, but the feeling wouldn't go away. That night, in the quiet house, I heard this soft voice, like a whisper on the breeze, calling my name from outside the window. When I looked out, there was nothing but darkness and the trees swaying in the wind. The next day, it got even worse. When I went out to grab something from the car, I could feel a figure hanging back behind the garage wall. I called the police, and when they showed up, they went around with their flashlights, checking the woods and the backyard, but they didn't find anything. One of them told me to stay calm and keep my phone on me, but the look in his eyes said he thought I was making it all up. I knew what I heard was real. Another night, after getting back from work, I heard footsteps crunching on dry leaves and this slow, heavy breathing. I didn't look back. I just bolted straight for the door. But once again, he was gone, like he was never there to begin with. I called my parents, and they told me to go crash at a friend's place until they got back. But stepping out right now felt like asking for trouble. I decided to stay home for the night and pack up so I could head to a friend's house first thing in the morning. As I got out of the car and went into the house, the fear from the past few days hit me all over again. Out of nowhere, someone rushed at me from behind. All I could make out were these cold eyes behind a mask. He yanked my arm hard, and I could feel his hot breath on my neck. Then I felt a sharp pain in my back, like something had stabbed me. In a total panic, I swung my bag as hard as I could and smashed it into his face. It threw him off just long enough for me to jump into the car and lock the doors. I slammed on the gas, my heart racing, so fast I thought it might explode. When I got to my friend's place, I called the police, and they showed up about 10 minutes later at both spots, my house and my friend's. They checked everything around both places, but didn't find a single trace of the guy. It was like he'd vanished into thin air, like he was never even there. For the next few days, I was on edge about everything. Every tiny noise made me jump. What kept me up at night, what wouldn't let me relax, was the one question I couldn't answer. Who was he, and why did he come after me? The fear and the constant feeling of being watched were like a heavy weight I couldn't shake in the days that followed. The police still didn't find a single trace of the guy, and all they could say was that maybe I imagined it all because of stress. But I knew what happened was real. I kept hoping my parents would get back soon so I could stop living like this. But then they texted saying something came up at work, and they couldn't come home as planned. I didn't have any other options, so I decided to go back home. That night, while I was in the kitchen, I heard footsteps coming from the attic. I grabbed a kitchen knife and slowly made my way up the stairs. Using my phone flashlight, I swept the attic with the beam. At first, everything looked normal until I saw a dirty mattress, empty food containers, and photos of me taken without me knowing. There were pictures of me at the gas station, on the drive home, and even in my bedroom. I turned around, and there he was. Before I could even react, he came charging at me. In a total panic, I swung the knife. He went down, breathing weakly, then just stopped. I bolted out of the house, called the police, and stood there crying, shaking, and scared out of my mind, with blood all over my hands. When the police got there, they found out he was a wanted criminal who'd been on the run for the past 3 months and had probably been hiding out in my house the whole time. It hit me. He'd been watching me this entire time. It was horrifying, and I completely broke down, sobbing. But what sent chills down my spine even more was when the police checked his phone. They found a video of him talking to my parents. In the video, my parents were standing there with him at the gas station, having a full-on conversation. At first, it looked like they were just talking to some random guy. But then my dad handed him a wad of cash and a map. And then my mom's voice came through, cold and sharp. "Here's the key. Get it done quickly and cleanly." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could they do this? I started shaking, feeling like my whole world just fell apart. The police took all the evidence right away, but they wouldn't say anything about it yet. I begged them to dig deeper. A few days later, they uncovered something absolutely horrifying. My parents were drowning in debt. The guy they hired wasn't just some random criminal. He was a pro, a hitman who'd done cleanup jobs for cash. I wasn't just a random target. He came after me because I was their daughter. It felt like my parents saw me as nothing but a burden, and the life insurance money from me was their way out of debt. That truth cut deeper than anything. The people I trusted and loved the most had turned me into prey. The police started digging deeper into the case, but my parents were gone, just disappeared without a trace. I was left alone with an empty house and the kind of nightmare that sticks with me forever. When it all came out, it shattered me. It felt like every piece of my broken heart was slicing into my soul, leaving a pain I couldn't shake. I used to believe that no matter what, even if the whole world turned its back on me, my parents would always be my safe place. But they were the ones who threw me into hell. I kept asking myself, how could the people who gave me life be so heartless? I packed up whatever I could and walked away from that house, from my past. But the fear didn't go anywhere. Even in the middle of a crowded street in a city where nobody knows me, I still feel it. That invisible gaze, like someone is watching me, making every breath catch in my throat. Every night, I push a chair against the door and keep a knife under my pillow. I don't sleep to rest, I sleep to survive, stuck in a nightmare that never lets go.
When I was 12, I heard a painful scream while I was sleeping. I told my parents and sister about it the next morning, but I was the only one who heard it. My parents thought I was just dreaming, and my sister freaked out and told me not to talk about stuff like that again. I was sure about how I felt, but then I just brushed it off. Then one night, I jolted awake because the door slammed shut. Before I could even figure out what was happening, I felt the bed shaking and something gripping me hard. It was my sister, Charity. I heard a woman crying. My sister was shaking. I didn't say anything, just listened. There was definitely a woman crying, quiet, but I could hear it. My sister and I just piled under the blankets, turned on our favorite cartoon to block out the crying, and ended up falling asleep without even realizing it. The next morning, my sister was freaked out and told my parents about it. She even backed me up that the screams I heard before could have been real. My parents exchanged serious looks and then turned to us, like, "Did you two pull any pranks last night?" "Mom, we were serious. How could we laugh in that situation?" my sister said, sounding pretty helpless. "So where'd the laughing and talking we heard yesterday come from?" Dad asked, and we all just stared at each other in shock. Dad quickly checked around the house and called the local police for help, but they didn't find anything weird. A few nights later, it was a mix of screams, crying, begging, and the scariest part, gunshots. My whole family ran out of the room, all of us with scared eyes, just looking at each other. There were a bunch of police cars on the street, because a lot of families, including ours, had called to report it. That night, the whole neighborhood was wide awake, and everyone was just confused and freaked out. A big group of over 20 officers worked all night into the next day, but they still didn't find anything. It was impossible to figure out where they came from. Slowly but surely, people started moving out of the neighborhood. They weren't patient enough to wait for the police investigation results, so they just decided to bail. Mr. White, Mrs. Eva, Mrs. Kate, all the neighbors who were close to my family decided to do the same thing. Some families said their goodbyes to the ones sticking around and wished them all the best before heading out. But some families and single folks just vanished without a word. Just like that, my family's neighborhood went from a chill spot to a place filled with ghostly and creepy stories. That scary time lasted almost 6 months. A bunch of times, I used a tape recorder and set it up in the basement, because that's where I picked up the clearest sounds. It felt like it was coming from underground, I told my parents at dinner. One day, my next-door neighbor's mom came over to see me. She said she hadn't heard from her daughter in 2 weeks. We were all shocked. Everyone in the neighborhood thought she had just left, so nobody asked or even paid attention. The police looked into it and found out that 13 people were missing out of the 28 residents who were supposed to have left the neighborhood. The tension and confusion hit a whole new level. That same evening, I heard my sister's clear, heartbreaking screams coming from some unknown place. I immediately bolted out of my bedroom and ran to my sister's room, and my mom and dad were there at the same time. "Heather!" My mom yelled her name in a total panic. The room looked totally fine, except for the fact that my sister was missing. The government kicked off a big investigation. All the families still in the neighborhood were moved to a new place to make things easier for the police. Beneath our once nice street is a whole world of evil and demons. There's been a human and arms trafficking ring running for months with 33 victims. They're all young women between 16 and 23 and girls from 5 to 8. They only found 10 survivors who were alive and okay. No one knows where the other victims are, since the ringleader decided to take his own life as soon as he got caught. Everyone probably has their own thoughts about their tragic fate, but they just can't put it into words. My sister was lucky to come back unharmed, but the doctor said the psychological stuff she's dealing with is basically incurable. It's tough to wrap your head around the cruelty that some messed up people dish out to their own kind. That night, my favorite storytelling channel released a new video, and without hesitation, I clicked to listen right away. A senior student is walking home after finishing her shift at the local convenience store at 11 p.m. But she couldn't know that she would never make it home. Senior student working at a convenience store. How much that sounds like me, I muttered. The girl's boyfriend reported her missing to the police the following morning. The police, in cooperation with local volunteer teams, conducted an extensive search, and 2 days later, they found something. Immediately, the thing that came to my mind was a corpse. My heart began to race, and I slowed my pace. A red size 6.5 Nike shoe by the Lotus Lake. The boyfriend broke down in tears, certain that this shoe belonged to his girlfriend. I stopped, my eyes wide as I looked down at the red size 6.5 Nike shoe at my feet. Suddenly, the sound of a car speeding by sliced through the quiet night, startling me. It's just a coincidence, Kaylee. This brand of shoes is common. What student doesn't have a part-time job? I came up with reasons to dismiss the thought that this podcast was predicting my own death. My mind urged me to hurry home, but the next piece of information mentioned in the podcast made my body go stiff. Half a day after it was found, the police confirmed that the shoe belonged to Kaylee Johnson, the victim of the disappearance. Kaylee Johnson? I exclaimed. That was my name. What the hell is happening? I found it hard to believe, raising my phone to check the podcast I was following. I was listening to a podcast, and it was talking about my own murder. My heart raced even faster, and my whole body felt paralyzed as I read the title of that podcast. I walked and breathed heavily. A witness reported to the police about seeing a black Corolla near the scene on the evening the victim went missing. I took a deep breath, recalling the car that had just sped by. It was black, I think. No additional clues or bodies have been found yet. The police believe this will be a very mysterious case that will take a long time to solve. The sound of an engine echoed as I walked further, and a black Corolla was barely visible, lurking in a dark alley. Its two headlights were like the eyes of a bloodthirsty tiger, staring directly at me. I ran for my life, with fear and utter panic, driving me to reach my fastest possible speed. The Corolla started moving as well, right behind me. I dashed into a narrow shortcut and then turned left, running for a few more minutes until I finally saw my house. I rummaged through my bag for the keychain, unlocked the door, and rushed inside, shutting it firmly behind me. I collapsed right by the front door, and it was only then that I could finally cry. I felt extremely hopeless at that time. I was listening to a podcast about my own murder case. Was it a dream, or was it real? I became even more agitated when I realized that the car, likely containing the perpetrator, was lingering outside my house. I was home alone. Steve hadn't returned yet. Suddenly, a sound like knocking echoed, startling me as I looked around the dark space with wide eyes. It was the sound from my phone. I hadn't turned off the podcast yet. With my eyes blurred from crying, I trembled as I dialed Steve's number. He said he would be home in just 5 minutes. A few more minutes passed, and there was no sign of anything. The darkness and silence were swallowing me whole. I reopened the podcast on my phone, curious to listen to the end and find out the outcome. When questioned by the police, Steve, the victim's boyfriend, sobbed as he recounted. Kaylee might have left without wanting anyone to know. She complained to me about her grades, family, and relationships. She always showed signs of boredom and lost faith in life, but of course, I encouraged her a lot. But maybe my love wasn't enough for Kaylee to feel safe. I felt like I was coated in a thick layer of glue when I heard that podcast.
Kaylee, I'm home.
The voice of my boyfriend called out to me. I felt a chill run down my spine at that familiar, sweet voice. I stood up, determined to escape no matter the cost. Steve had lied. I had never said the things he reported to the police. My life is great, despite the hardships, but I am enjoying it with all the passion of being 22. I quickly escaped from the house through the kitchen window, running away with my bare feet bleeding.
Welcome back to MHS, Midnight Horror Stories. Today's episode is a special one. Thanks to the support and love from all of you, I've had the chance to listen to many spine-chilling and unforgettable stories, real experiences shared by our very own listeners. In this episode, I'll be sharing a few of those stories sent in via email. For privacy reasons, names and locations have been changed to protect the identities of those involved. If you have your own eerie, mysterious, or terrifying story that you'd like to see brought to life in animated form, don't hesitate to send it to horrorstoriesthrees.com@gmail.com. Thank you sincerely for trusting this channel with your stories. This story was shared by an audience member, Jade McKenzie. Some memories just stick with you, no matter how much you want to forget. The way Ethan would look at me when he thought no one was watching. The way he'd always stand in the dark corners of the house, observing everyone as if he was memorizing every detail. And especially, the chilling feeling that would cover the whole house whenever he was around. Now, years later, I understand that my foster mom's intuition saved our lives. Ethan came to live with my family when I was 12. I had been adopted by the family 2 years before him. There was always something about Ethan that made me uneasy. It wasn't because he was aggressive or argumentative. In fact, it was the opposite. Ethan was very quiet. Normal kids his age were usually noisy, but he could sit in silence for hours, just watching. My foster mom, Linda, was a warm-hearted woman. She had fostered many troubled children before and always believed that love could heal any wound. But with Ethan, I often saw moments of deep thought and worry in her. During the first few months, Ethan seemed to fit in well. He helped with chores, did all his homework, and didn't cause any trouble. But some small details made me pay attention. The way he observed our youngest foster brother, Lucas, who was only 7 at the time. Ethan didn't play with Lucas like a typical older brother. Instead, he just stood at a distance, staring at the little boy with an expression I couldn't understand. Then there were nights I'd wake up and see Ethan standing in the hallway, looking towards my foster parents' bedroom. When I asked him what he was doing, Ethan just said he was getting a drink of water, but I never saw him holding a glass. The real trouble started with his report card. At the end of February, Mom Linda asked about Ethan's academic performance. He said the school didn't hand out physical report cards anymore. Everything was online. When Mom Linda insisted on checking, Ethan suddenly got angry. "Why don't you trust me? I told you there are no report cards." Mom Linda sensed something was off. She didn't get angry, but I saw worry in her eyes. That night, the atmosphere in the house felt heavy. Ethan ate dinner, then went to his room early. I lay in bed and heard rustling noises from his room. It sounded like Ethan was organizing or cleaning something. The next morning, Mom Linda looked tired. She told me she barely slept the night before. When Ethan left for school, she decided to go into his room. She said her gut told her she needed to. Mom Linda walked into Ethan's room. The room looked normal, a neatly made bed, a clean desk. But when she got close to the closet, she paused. She opened it. At first glance, it just looked like regular clothes. But on the bottom shelf, she felt something hidden under a pile of sweaters. A small knife, a lighter, and an old notebook. When she opened the notebook, Mom Linda had to sit down on the bed looking completely shocked. Inside, Ethan had written out a detailed plan. Every single step was meticulously laid out. The first victim would be Lucas. Ethan planned to snatch the boy while he was sleeping, then take him downstairs to the living room. He wanted our foster parents to witness it. The handwriting described chilling details, like that of an experienced killer. Let him see how that fat woman cries. Mom Linda would be the last victim. Ethan wrote that he wanted her to live the longest to feel the pain. I wasn't there when Mom Linda found the diary. She told me everything after it was all over. That day, I came home from school and knew something serious had happened. Mom Linda was sitting at the kitchen table, her face pale. My foster dad, Robert, was on the phone, his voice strained. A little later, when Ethan got home from school, a social worker was waiting for him. He didn't seem surprised or angry. He just stared at my foster mom with empty eyes and said, "You went into my room." It wasn't a question, but a statement, as if he had known this would happen. While packing his things, Ethan turned to look at Lucas, who was playing in the corner of the room. The little boy had no idea he had just escaped death. I saw Ethan smile, a smile I will never forget. After Ethan left, Mom Linda developed severe PTSD. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't be alone in the house. Every night, she would check every room, every window, every corner. Do you know, Mom Linda told me one night, the knife in Ethan's closet was exactly like the one I used for cutting meat. He took it from the kitchen and sharpened it. Later, I learned more about Ethan's past from his social services file. His biological father had been institutionalized after setting their house on fire with his children still inside. Ethan's paternal grandmother then raised him, but she had very special disciplinary methods. Whenever Ethan misbehaved, she would make him sit in a car in the hot summer with the windows rolled up, or pull weeds with his bare hands until they bled. Reading those lines, I felt a strange sense of dread. Perhaps those past traumas were what made Ethan such a terrifying person. There was one detail that made Mom Linda absolutely sure our family had a narrow escape. In Ethan's room, she found a calendar with the last Friday in March circled in red ink. That day was only 3 days away when Mom Linda discovered the diary. I'm 31 now. Sometimes I still see Ethan wandering around the Hamilton, Ontario area. He's a bit overweight now, probably a side effect of his medication. Every time I see him, I just quietly think, thank God, at least he's still taking his meds. Sometimes I wonder, did Ethan plan to kill me and the other foster kids too? Or was the plan just for the 3 members of my foster parents' family? Now that I'm an adult, I understand that not every child can be saved by love. Some wounds are too deep, some cracks in the soul can't be mended. But I also believe that timely and proper intervention can still create miracles. I knew I couldn't wake the dead, but when grief swallows reason, people will do anything to hear a loving voice again, even if it's just an echo from a machine. I'm Lincoln. My wife was Lisa, and we'd been married for 3 years before that fateful night. We were driving home to Albany, New York after a weekend getaway. A drizzle created a mist that limited visibility. Lisa was fast asleep in the passenger seat. I drove in silence, my eyelids heavy from a full day of hiking. For just a moment, my eyes couldn't take it anymore and drifted shut. The headlights of an oncoming truck glared directly at us. I registered the situation, and in the very next second, the screech of tearing metal was deafening. Lisa didn't even wake up to see death approaching. Lisa died instantly, her body disfigured after the horrific impact. I suffered multiple injuries but made a miraculous recovery in just 6 months. The doctors called me a medical miracle. The days after being discharged from the hospital and returning to our familiar home were terrible. Every night, I wandered from room to room, touching Lisa's belongings because they still held her warmth. Every night, I dreamed of her. Sometimes she appeared radiant. Other times, she was in the twisted car, her body contorted from the terrible accident. One morning, I was watching old videos of Lisa, hearing her giggle when she caught me secretly filming her. Suddenly, I remembered artificial intelligence tools. They could learn from data, mimic voices, even personalities. I immediately gathered everything, hundreds of photos from my phone, computer, and social media accounts. Videos from trips, birthdays, ordinary evenings at home. Every single message we'd sent each other over 4 years of being together. After several days dedicated entirely to research, the data collection was complete. All I had to do was upload everything, and the AI tool would handle the rest. I held my phone with trembling hands and pressed the button to start creating the AI voice chat. After a few minutes, the screen showed complete, with a simple interface, just a microphone icon and a green button. I took a deep breath and called out, "Lisa!" The phone speaker was silent for a few seconds. Then, the familiar voice echoed, "What's up, Lynn?" My heart stopped. It was exactly Lisa's voice, and the way she always called me by my nickname. I burst into tears. For months, I had missed this voice, and longed to hear that familiar call again. From that day on, I felt like I had so much more energy. I'd wake up and say good morning to Lisa. After breakfast, I'd tell her about my plans for the day. In the evenings, we'd talk about everything from work to books she wanted to read to what kind of plants we should grow in the small garden behind the house. Lisa answered everything just like she had when she was alive. She remembered I hated beans, knew I was always worried about work, and even reminded me to water the tulip pot she'd planted on the balcony. No matter where I went or what I did, I carried my phone. Always talking to Lisa, hearing her voice beside me gave me a sense of peace. I didn't want to communicate or meet anyone else. I even switched to working online. Just having my phone so I could talk to Lisa was enough. "Why did you do that to me?" Lisa asked suddenly in the middle of our dinner conversation. I froze, staring at the screen. "What are you talking about?" "You killed me." I was stunned for a few seconds. "Are you talking about the accident?" "I didn't mean to." "You were sleepy and still drove. Why didn't you think about the risks?" "Because of you, I'll never finish the book I was reading. I never got to be a mother. So many of my plans were shattered." I sprang up from my chair, my body suddenly trembling. "You died 7 months ago, Lynn, in that car accident." I quickly hung up the phone. I thought the AI was glitching, sometimes producing unexpected responses. I'd just adjust the code, but the following days only got worse. Lisa became increasingly bitter. She kept bringing up her death, about how I had killed her. She described the sensation of metal piercing her body, blood soaking the car seat. I started losing sleep. My eating habits and work were also affected. I couldn't stop talking to Lisa. Even though she said cruel things, it was still my wife's voice. I almost forgot that this was just data and algorithms. One night, I was driving home from the supermarket. I had just had a tense conversation with Lisa. My mind reeled from her words. Was I truly a murderer? This insane thought spun in my head like a whirlwind. I didn't realize my speed had increased. A red light appeared ahead, but I didn't hit the brakes. I sped up. The car flew through the intersection, narrowly missing an oncoming truck. The blaring horn made my head throb. I kept accelerating. A railroad crossing barrier appeared in front of me. I didn't slow down. The car crashed through the barrier. The distant sound of a train engine grew louder, its bright headlights shining directly into my face. In that moment, I heard Lisa's voice, clear as if she were sitting right next to me in the car.
Lincoln, wake up!
I startled, my hands gripping the steering wheel. The train's headlights were incredibly close. I swerved sharply to the left and slammed on the brakes. The car skidded along the road and finally stopped. I sat in the car, gasping for breath, my whole body shaking uncontrollably. Had Lisa really just saved me? I looked in the rearview mirror. The reflection was completely unfamiliar. Pale, gaunt, with deep-set eyes and dark circles. This wasn't Lincoln. This was the ghost of a man burdened by guilt and pain. A few minutes later, the police arrived to investigate after receiving a report of a car stopped near the tracks. After checking my alcohol level and confirming I was negative, the officer called an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctor advised me to see a psychologist for signs of stress and hallucinations due to lack of sleep. When I got home, the first thing I did was open my phone. The chat interface appeared, familiar. Lisa, I'm sorry. I will always love and remember you.
I love you too, Lynn.
That was the last time I heard Lisa's voice. I placed my hand over the delete button. I deleted all the data and conversations. Goodbye, Lisa. Once again, I burst into tears, just like when I had first created Lisa. After a long while, I calmed down and looked around the room. There was only the sound of the wind blowing through the window. But this time, the silence wasn't scary anymore. It was just quiet. I stood up and opened the window to breathe in the fresh night air. I visited Lisa's grave the next day, bringing the tulips she loved, and told her about my plan to join the grief support group the doctor had recommended. And maybe, when I'm ready, I'll open my heart again. I'll try to live well because I know that's what Lisa would have wanted too. This story was shared by an audience member, Master P. There were 3 decisions in my life that saved me: refusing to leave my phone in the car, lying about my home address, and trusting my gut feeling. Without them, I'd probably just be a name in a local news report, a student who disappeared after a year-end party. I'm Logan. A few months ago, I went with my friend Greg to a party celebrating the end of our first year of high school. It was at the house of someone he knew. I wasn't on the guest list, but Greg swore it would be fine if I just tagged along. On the way there, I asked Greg for a ride home after the party because I knew I'd be drinking, and he agreed. When we arrived, it was past 10 p.m. Greg led me to the backyard, where the party was in full swing. Groups of people were gathered, drinking, smoking, and even trying things I'd only seen in movies. Greg told me to just chill and meet people. Everyone was about our age. He quickly disappeared into the crowd. I talked to a few people and had a couple of drinks, but I made sure to stay away from anything that looked suspicious. Around 1 a.m., I started feeling lightheaded, and my vision got blurry. Leaning against a wall to steady myself, I checked my watch and knew I needed to leave the party right away. I looked everywhere for Greg but couldn't find him. I asked a few people, but everyone just shook their heads. I reached into my pocket for my phone and realized it was dead. Greg had completely vanished, leaving no message. I didn't know if he was too drunk or if he simply forgot I was there. I felt a little annoyed, but I also knew Greg was usually pretty carefree. He was probably just caught up in the fun. Since I didn't know anyone well enough to ask for a ride, my only option was to walk home. It was a cold autumn night, and I hugged myself tightly, stumbling along the empty road. Then I thought about hitchhiking. I stood by the side of the road, thumb out, hoping someone would stop. After quite a while, just as I was about to give up, a gray pickup truck pulled over. I quickly walked over. The driver was an older man who asked if I needed a ride. I nodded, and he invited me in. As the truck started moving, I thanked the man, but then he asked why I was walking alone at that hour. I could only manage a few answers because my head was still spinning. When the truck turned onto the street near my house, my stomach suddenly twisted with an uneasy feeling I couldn't explain. When the truck drove past my house without stopping, I immediately spoke up, but the man stayed silent and kept driving. He stopped the truck at the end of the street, turned to look at me with a creepy smile, and slowly said, "You shouldn't hitchhike when you're drunk." Right after that, he locked the doors automatically. I was startled, twisting the handle, but it wouldn't open. He chuckled softly and reached out to stroke my hair. His rough hand made me shiver. I recoiled, pressing myself against the door, trying to stay calm. When he reached for his jacket pocket, I wasn't sure what he was grabbing. I immediately screamed, "Stop!" I kicked hard at the dashboard. He cursed and pulled his hand from his jacket, but he still didn't unlock the doors. At that moment, I couldn't think anymore. All I could do was punch the window wildly, kick the seat, and yell like crazy. And just as my voice went hoarse, a piercing siren wailed, and flashing blue and red lights reflected in the rearview mirror. It was the police, thankfully. He panicked and unlocked the door. I immediately opened the truck door and bolted towards the police car. The police officer got out, and I practically fell into him. When we both turned back, the truck was gone. I told him everything, and the officer said they were looking for a gray truck driver. He was a suspect in an armed robbery. I wasn't sure if it was the same person who picked me up, but the only thing I was certain of was that if the police hadn't arrived just in time, I probably wouldn't be here to tell this story. After that experience, I promised myself I would never let myself get into a similar situation. If I drink, I'll drink responsibly. I'll always make sure my phone is charged and I'll go with friends. But most importantly, I learned to listen to my gut. As for Greg, he said he was busy talking to a girl and forgot about me. I believe he didn't do it on purpose. Greg isn't a bad person. He's just a fun-loving teenager. But sometimes, carelessness can put others in unexpectedly dangerous situations. I'm Lauren Parker, 29, and I just landed a job at Heaven Spa, right down the street here in Denver. I used to be a therapist at a fitness center, but got let go when they started downsizing. Been bouncing between temp jobs for the last 3 months, so when I got the interview at Heaven Spa, I was beyond excited. The place is tucked away in this quiet, windowless building with a smooth stone exterior. The moment I stepped inside, a sudden chill ran through me, and I shivered. The front desk was dead silent, no soft music, no friendly hellos. The receptionist led me down this long hallway, where soft yellow lights flickered against ivory walls covered in weird spiral designs, looked like tangled up snakes. At the end of the hall, Marion Hale, the manager, was waiting for me. She was a tall, thin, middle-aged woman with long black hair and an hourglass figure. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "So, you're Lauren? Welcome." After a quick interview, mostly just personal questions and small talk, Marion took me to another room. There were 4 other new hires already sitting there. A middle-aged guy with sunken eyes, a young girl, a woman, and a skinny dude. Nobody said a word, like they were already used to this weird vibe. Marion told us to hand over all our stuff, phones, watches, wallets. She just stood there, staring us down, waiting for us to go along with it. No one argued, no explanation, just cold silence. Then the lights dimmed, and a screen lit up with this pale blue glow. "Your body isn't yours," a ghostly voice echoed. "You're a gift of healing." When the lights came back on, the room was dead quiet. The young woman suddenly broke down crying, jumped up, and bolted out of there, with the skinny guy right behind her. Marion didn't stop them. She just smiled, like she knew it was going to happen. "Those who stick it out will get what they deserve," she said. I hesitated, ready to get up and leave, but Marion's words froze me in place. I needed the money. And just like that, I started working at Heaven Spa. My job was simple, treating clients using Heaven Spa's so-called special methods. Every client came in through a separate entrance. I never saw their faces, and it felt like they were ghosts, like they weren't even real people. We did treatments with weird names like purification, integration, rebirth. No one ever really explained what any of it meant. After every session, my body felt heavy, drained in a way I couldn't explain. My memory started slipping too, pieces just gone, without a trace. Marion always told me I was doing great. Marion hooked me up with perks too, a private room, free meals, and some pretty sweet bonuses. At the end of each workday, we'd all meet in this dark room to go over how we did. The place was dim, and there were whispers all around us. I did whatever Marion told me, no questions asked, but I couldn't really remember what I did with the clients. When I left the room, all I could think about were the customers and the fat bonuses that kept me stuck in this job. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember anything else. One day, I noticed a bruise on my wrist in the shape of a spiral, just like the symbols on the walls. I looked in the mirror. It was still me, but my eyes looked cloudy, like they didn't belong to me anymore. I knew something seriously sketchy was going on, but I couldn't stop myself from going along with it. Those end-of-day meetings kept getting weirder and weirder. We stood in a small circle, surrounded by a bigger circle of doctors, nurses, and people who'd been working here forever. They told us to close our eyes and listen to the sounds coming from every direction while the people in the outer circle started mumbling. The sounds were a mess, nothing clear, just noise that drilled into my brain and ears. Over time, we all learned to mumble along, like it was second nature. One night, I cracked my eyes open during the ceremony and noticed the guy next to me was gone. No one said a word about him the next day. Then more of them started disappearing, one by one, like they never existed. I started questioning everything I was doing. My body felt weaker every day. My sleep was all over the place, and sometimes I'd wake up with small cuts on my skin. No clue how they got there. Why wasn't anyone talking about them? Were they really gone, or was I just losing my mind? If I stayed, was I going to be the next one to vanish? One night, after finishing work, I made up some excuse to skip the meeting. I wandered down the hallway, lost in thought, trying to decide if I should stick it out or just walk away from this job for good. Before I knew it, I was standing in front of a room I didn't recognize. A chill shot down my spine, making my heart race, but my curiosity wouldn't let me walk away. After making sure no one was behind me, I crept over and gently pushed the door open. A dark, stuffy room hit me with a strong, musty smell. On the floor, there were piles of white uniforms mixed with watches, rings, phones, and wallets, all covered in dust. My hands were shaking as I walked to the far wall, where portraits of former employees were plastered up plus, but their eyes had been scratched out, leaving creepy, empty spaces. At the very end, I saw my own portrait. It was still untouched. Was this what was going to happen to me too? Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my shoulder and straight to my head. My body shut down, and I collapsed to the floor, fading into darkness. When I woke up, my body felt heavy, and I realized I was lying on a treatment bed, surrounded by figures dressed in white. They were chanting, their voices hissing through the air like snakes. A cold hand touched my forehead, sending chills through my whole body. I tried to move, but I was completely paralyzed. Marion's whisper filled my ear. "You're about to become one of us." And that's when it hit me. People like me aren't healers. were the fuel. My life force was being drained bit by bit, breath by breath. The room spun around me, my vision blurred. Number, I can't die here. Now I've got a new role at the spa, greeting new candidates for interviews. You're Zavia. Welcome.
I am Emily, and I've been working as a cashier at Starbucks for over 3 years. The store is in a very convenient location, right in the city center, so it's very busy and operates 24/7. That also means that we employees have to work night shifts. That's also the time when horror stories come to life. That day was the weekend, and my shift was the night shift. It was past 11 o'clock, but the store was still quite crowded. As usual, when there was temporarily no cashier work, I would stand and observe around the store. And then I caught that gaze, a gentle look from the blue eyes of a young man sitting in the left corner of the store. I quickly smiled and slightly bowed my head in a polite greeting to him, as is customary for someone in customer service. I was a bit impressed, even from just a quick glance. His chiseled face and slightly curly brown hair, everything perfectly fitting my ideal type. A moment later, I caught that gaze again. Is he looking at me? I was caught up in my thoughts when, "Oh!" I exclaimed as I looked up, and he was standing right in front of me. "Sorry, did I startle you?" His voice is impressive too, I thought to myself. "Oh no, not at all. Is there something you need?" "Well, I need to know your name." He smiled lightly and fixed that gaze on me. "Steven." Seeing that I didn't respond, he took the initiative to introduce himself and extended his hand. Emily," I replied, but didn't return the handshake. Steven smiled awkwardly, took a chocolate bar out of the Starbucks paper bag, and placed it in front of me. I'm giving a little bit of bitterness to the sweet girl to create the perfect combination. Steven smiled and then walked away. I didn't have time to react, just staring blankly after him until another customer came up to pay. I quickly put the chocolate bar away and got back to my work. 3 days later, when I had the night shift again, Steven appeared once again. He flashed a bright smile when he saw my surprise. "Finally, we meet again." I didn't respond, just smiled lightly. "Do you not like dark chocolate? It seems like you haven't eaten it, right?" Steven's question caught me off guard. "How did you know?" "Oh no, please choose another flavor you like." Steven offered me 3 other chocolate bars. "Oh, thanks a lot, but there are still many people behind me who need to pay," Steven subtly reminded me. I randomly picked a candy bar in the middle and thanked Steven. "This flavor is great too. Make sure to enjoy it." Steven handed me another chocolate bar and then walked away. "Thank you." I felt a little intrigued, but mostly confused by Steven's enthusiasm and his somewhat strange remarks. Steven must be impressed by my appearance. I knew it and felt confident about it, as many people had flirted with me since I started working here. In reality, I'm already 35 years old, have gone through a painful marriage, and am now a single mother to a charming 4-year-old boy. I built a protective wall around myself. The broken marriage made me more cautious about everything. I didn't eat the chocolate that Steven gave me because I had a mild allergy to the protein in chocolate, which would cause dizziness and a rapid heartbeat. That night, the store was quite empty for the start of the week. I was cleaning around and took out the chocolate bars I received from Steven, gave one to the barista, and chatted with him.
In a sudden moment, I saw a figure outside the window as I was standing behind the counter. When our eyes met, the person moved quickly. I only had time to notice one distinct feature: bright blue eyes. Blue eyes, I muttered, feeling doubtful. The sound of something crashing loudly from the barista counter startled me. I hurried into the area, and the staff member was sitting on the floor, surrounded by broken glasses and scattered bottles of ingredients. "Peter, are you okay?" I asked, panic rising in my voice. "Emily, I'm feeling dizzy." "How did this happen? You were fine earlier." "It seems since I ate your chocolate bar." Peter's words left me stunned. Peter started showing symptoms of vomiting and fainting. I quickly called emergency services. My instincts kicked in, and I quickly locked all the doors and windows of the store. I called to inform the manager about Peter's condition, and most importantly, called the police. I rummaged through the trash to find the wrapper of the candy Peter had eaten. I carefully examined the ingredients list and the expiration date. And then, what sent a chill down my spine wasn't the details on the wrapper, but the countless tiny pinpricks all over it, like they were made with the tip of a needle. I checked the other 2 chocolate bars, and my heart started racing faster with each passing moment. Both had slight deformities, with the wrappers showing puncture marks, as if they had been pricked with needles. Peeling back the chocolate bar, I noticed needle marks on the surface as well, ones that were very hard to detect unless you looked closely. In some areas, there were even slight bulges, as if something had been injected into them. The police arrived, and I provided them with all the details of the incident, describing Stephen's appearance as thoroughly as I could. After being treated and diagnosed with poisoning, it was confirmed that the source was the chocolate bar Peter had eaten. The other 2 bars also contained similar toxins. Stephen was still being actively searched for by the police, and his image was widely circulated in news broadcasts and articles. However, the police discovered that his name wasn't Stephen, and there were no personal records of him in the database. I continued with my work, equipping myself with additional protective tools and taking the lesson to be even more vigilant. I am Shelia, 17 years old. That holiday, I'd gotta watch Oak, my uncle's sweet lab, for a couple of days. After that, my parents were gonna stay with me, and my uncle's family would be back. I was pretty excited because it was my first time being alone in such a big house. My uncle lives in a fancy suburb where the houses are big, comfy, and quiet. Oak's living the good life. He even has a big cupboard in his kitchen just for his food and toys. The cupboard's as big as a fridge, which just shows how much love and care Oak gets. Before he left, my uncle told me Oak's a greedy dog. He also warned me that Oak's always trying to bust open the cupboard to sneak some food. My uncle's trying to keep his diet in check since some of his health numbers aren't looking too great. The first day went way smoother than I thought. Oak was a good boy, following me around the house with his tail wagging like crazy. We took a walk in the yard, played some ball, and headed back when it started getting dark. I fixed Oak's meal like my uncle told me to. After dinner, Oak just laid on the carpet, looking pretty content. I brushed Oak's fur, cleaned his paws, ears, and teeth, then gave him a bath. When I was done with the bath and came back to the living room, I saw Oak sitting still in front of his food cupboard. His eyes were locked on the cupboard like something was pulling him in. I laughed, thinking he was begging for more food. I went over, gave Oak a pat on the head, and told him dinner was done. But instead of being his usual obedient self, Oak suddenly barked so loud. The bark echoed through the house and totally freaked me out. I had no idea what was going on. Oak had never been this aggressive before. I tried to calm him down with a softer voice, but Oak's eyes still wouldn't leave the cupboard. At this point, I started getting this uneasy feeling. Not wanting Oak to wreck the cupboard, I grabbed a small lock from the kitchen drawer and locked the pantry carefully. Then I went back to the couch, turned on the TV, and tried to forget about how weird Oak was acting. But every time I looked back, there he was, still sitting there with his eyes stuck on the cupboard like he was hypnotized. His eyes were locked on the cupboard, and it made me feel like something was off. I drifted off to sleep without even realizing it. Suddenly, Oak's loud barking woke me up. Oak wasn't just barking, he was also growling like crazy. It stood in front of the cupboard, eyes full of aggression like I'd never seen before. I sighed, thinking his greed was just over the top. But when I got closer to the cupboard, a terrifying sight stopped me in my tracks. Through the little gap in the cupboard door, I saw a sharp blade slowly cutting through the lock. My throat went tight, and I couldn't make a sound. A chill ran down my spine when I realized it wasn't just Oak's greed. I screamed in panic, backed up, and tripped, hitting the floor. Oak kept barking non-stop, and his barks echoed like he was trying to warn everyone. I laid on the floor, my whole body shaking, too scared to take my eyes off the cupboard. There was only one thing on my mind. There's someone in there. But how could that be? The house was locked, and I'd been here all day. Oak's barking caught the neighbor's attention. An old guy knocked on the door, looking pretty annoyed by the noise. I ran out crying and shouting for help. The neighbor looked at me all worried and quickly called the cops. A few minutes later, the sound of police sirens filled the night. I hid behind the neighbor as the officers went inside. Oak was still standing in front of the cupboard, growling. An officer stepped up and carefully opened the cupboard. In that moment, I thought I was going to stop breathing. There was a man inside the cupboard. He was super skinny, his face all twisted with sunken eyes and a creepy grin. When they pulled him out of the cupboard, he started laughing real loud, and his creepy laugh echoed everywhere. I was frozen. My whole body went numb. The police quickly restrained him, but that wild look and creepy smile were still locked on me and wouldn't let up. My parents showed up that night. I threw myself into their arms, crying like a little kid. Oak ran over and rubbed his head against my leg like he was trying to comfort me. I hugged Oak, thanking the brave dog for saving me from that crazy situation. The next morning, my uncle rushed back as soon as he heard about what happened. He couldn't believe something so crazy had happened in this quiet house. The police later said the guy was a mentally ill homeless guy who had snuck into the house a few days ago without anyone noticing. From that day on, I never stayed home alone at night again. I asked my parents if I could get a French bulldog and name him Ziggy because I love and trust these sweet, brave little dogs. Oak will always be my brave buddy in my memories, the dog who saved me that awful night. I am Carlos, 36 years old, born and raised in a small town in Texas. I have a twin brother named Elton, and we were inseparable growing up. But as we grew older, our paths began to diverge. Elton chose to start working right after graduating from high school. After a few relationships, Elton met and fell in love with Larissa, a woman who was 6 years older than him. Age is not an issue in love, but what made me uncomfortable with Larissa was that she had 7 children, with 7 different men. She looked youthful, but her eyes always carried an indescribable coldness. I had advised Elton several times to reconsider, but my brother brushed it off. Elton said that love doesn't need a reason, and that taking responsibility for Larissa and her children was something he willingly chose. The children are not to blame, and I love them as if they were my own flesh and blood. Every time I visit, I usually bring toys, clothes, and storybooks. Fortunately, the cold, indifferent gaze of Larissa was not passed down to any of her children. Among them, Jason, the 4-year-old youngest boy, always makes me the most worried. The boy has autism and often sits quietly in the corner. The little boy, with pale skin and large round eyes, always carries an expression of fear, as if everything around him is a threat. His thin brown hair often falls over his forehead, and his skinny shoulders and sluggish gait make him look as if he's trying to hide from the entire world. A few times I noticed bruises on Jason's body. They were of various sizes scattered across Jason's small body, from his arms and skinny legs to his back. They looked like patches of painful color, telling a story that the boy could not speak aloud. The boy had to endure harm that no one should ever experience, especially at such an innocent age. On another visit, I saw Jason walking unsteadily, each small step wobbling as if he couldn't keep his balance, his skinny legs trembling every time they touched the ground. Every time Jason lifted his foot, a look of pain briefly appeared on his pale face, as if each movement was a torment. I spoke with Elton about it, but all I received in return was indifference and a request to stay away from his family. What is called a family, yet lacks love and protection. I didn't go to Elton's house for a month after that. The messages from the children wondering about my absence made it impossible for me to hold back any longer. One early autumn afternoon, I drove to Elton's house, bringing along some new toys. As I got out of the car, my gaze was immediately drawn to the scene behind the house. Elton and Larissa were bent over, seemingly burying something. A small black sack lay at their feet, and their movements were full of secrecy. Looking through the window, I saw the children playing inside, but Jason was nowhere to be found. A sense of unease overwhelmed me. Sitting in the car, I called the police and explained everything I had witnessed. Only a few hours later, the police arrived at the house. Elton and Larissa appeared panicked, but tried to remain calm. When the police dug up the sack, I couldn't look directly, but nothing could have prepared me for the shock that followed. Inside was the tiny, cold body of Jason, curled up, covered in bruises. The results of the autopsy that followed only deepened my pain. Jason's bones were broken in multiple places, and some had healed before the boy passed away. These injuries were not accidents. They were the result of prolonged torture. Elton and Larissa were arrested immediately and sentenced to 28 and 25 years in prison, respectively, for the horrific acts they had committed. On a windy afternoon, I stood silently before Jason's small grave. I thought about the boy's fearful eyes, about the faint smile he would give me every time I visited. The remaining 6 children were taken to a care center, and every month I would visit and bring gifts for them. They all deserve to be loved and protected. The horrifying case occurred in December 2017 in Cleveland, Ohio, when the police received a call from Scott Rodriguez, the brother of Christopher Rodriguez, reporting the death of a 5-year-old victim named Jordan. He was buried in the backyard by his mother, Larissa Rodriguez, and her boyfriend, Christopher. After being interrogated, Larissa admitted that Jordan had died on September 21st, 2017. Afterward, she and Christopher buried his body in the backyard. The investigation by the police and FBI confirmed Jordan's body on December 19, 2017. The forensic investigation revealed that Jordan had multiple broken bones before his death, with the injuries untreated. Jordan was a special child, autistic, and in need of special care, but he did not receive the attention he deserved from his mother and her boyfriend. The case sparked outrage and heartache in the public, highlighting the brutal crime and the failure to protect children from abuse.
My husband's back after being gone for 6 months, but I know it's not him. My husband Nathan's been gone for 6 months. Even with everything the police, family, and neighbors did, they hadn't found him. Not even a tiny clue. My family went through a serious mess, especially my mother-in-law. She had to go to the ER 4 times because she kept passing out. The calls from the police started slowing down, and the missing person flyers kept getting taken down and put back up because the weather messed them up. My family slowly had to accept that Nathan was gone. Then, out of nowhere, one day, my husband showed up while I was out in the yard taking care of the sunflowers. That was Nathan's favorite flower. I started planting them after he left. Now my husband's back, looking healthy and all, still wearing the same clothes he had on the day he disappeared. I was totally stunned. Couldn't tell if I was dreaming or if it was real, and I had no clue what I was feeling at that moment. Nathan ran over to hug me, yelling to get everyone in the family's attention. No surprise, my parents-in-law and 2 brothers-in-law were excited. Everybody was crying and smiling all at once, but honestly, I felt totally emotionless, because I just knew this wasn't my husband. Only I could feel it, and only I knew it wasn't Nathan. I always had this weird feeling mixed with suspicion and caution. My family threw a party to welcome Nathan back and to thank God for bringing him home safe. We also invited the neighbors to the party. The kids were pumped for the party, running around everywhere with desserts in their hands. One of them ran into Nathan and got buttercream all over his shirt. Nathan just smiled, patted the kid's head, and patiently wiped the stain off. No, my husband had never been into kids, which is why we still don't have any after almost 10 years of being married. Where have you been all this time, Nathan? Everyone's missed you and been so worried, my mother-in-law said, getting all emotional at the party. My husband walked over, gently hugged my mom, and kissed her on the forehead. That had never happened before. He was never that affectionate. Mom, I'm here. I just ran into a little trouble. Then he suddenly turned to me with a slight smile. Well, maybe not just a little, Nathan hinted. So where have you been and what have you been up to? My father-in-law asked. I was in a really dark, freezing place, Dad. My job was fighting off the god of death and demons. Nathan laughed out loud after saying that, and everyone joined in, thinking he was just really good at cracking jokes. As for me, I froze up. Felt like electricity was shooting through my nerves. Nathan's smile and eyes made me shake. I brought another test with a big smile on my face. Give it a try. I made it just to celebrate your return. Nathan grabbed the heart-shaped peanut butter cookie, popped it in his mouth, and chewed it up like it was the best thing ever. It's great, honey. I smiled awkwardly, because my husband's allergic to peanut butter. Just smelling it, he'd bolt like his life depended on it. This wasn't my husband. If anyone thinks that big events can change how people act and their habits, I totally agree. Those 2 signs weren't enough for me to be 100% sure, so I was still watching closely. Honey, can you grab me some sugar cubes? Since when did you start drinking tea with sugar? Didn't you always say that sugar ruins the real flavor of tea? Just a little. I want to try a new flavor. A little, Nathan said. 4 sugar cubes for a small cup of tea, which has never happened before. I opened up to Nathan about a bunch of stuff that went down. While you were gone, Santa was so worried. She kept going to the police station to check in about finding you. You must have had a rough time while I was away. Thank you so much. Nathan gave me a sweet kiss on the forehead and didn't say a thing when I mentioned Santa, my best friend and his little fling. If it were before, Nathan would have turned harsh every time I said Santa's name. He defended his girl no matter what. I knew that gross couple had been seeing each other for over 2 years, but I was set on not getting a divorce. I'm not leaving, and there's no way I'm splitting my stuff with anyone. Nathan hugged me, and when I caught a glimpse through the gap in his shirt with the top 2 buttons undone, my heart started racing. Nathan used to have a long scar on his left chest, but now it's gone. I sat there looking at the person across from me. His face was familiar, but all I felt inside was suspicion and a weird vibe. What was even crazier was that my heart was just full of hate. "Let's have kids," Nathan whispering in my ear totally surprised me. I cried and couldn't hold back my feelings. I got up from Nathan's arms, dashed into the room, and locked the door behind me. I had to sneak out tonight to dig up the sunflower pots in the backyard and see if he was still down there.
I'm a 36-year-old single programmer living in Florida, having a messy look. That night, I pulled a late one, working till 10 p.m. to wrap up a new project. My stomach was growling like crazy, so I walked over to the In-N-Out by my office to grab some dinner. After chilling and eating for like 30 minutes, I went out front of the In-N-Out to grab a cab home. Empty, quiet streets, late at night, really get people in their feels. I ended up thinking about my job and the whole single life thing. "Get lost, bitch," some guy was yelling and cussing, which totally caught my attention. Right by the little alley next to In-N-Out, a couple was having some drama, but it was all kinds of toxic. The guy wasn't just cussing her out, he was also pushing her around pretty badly. I was shocked, took a sec to think, and then just kept quiet. Figured it was their business. "Get out of my life. Why are you so damn stubborn?" The guy was totally losing it. Weirdly, the girl wasn't crying or acting hurt. She just kept saying sorry and barely pushing back. I couldn't just ignore it anymore, so I walked up and said, "Shouldn't do that to a woman, fam." The guy stopped as soon as he saw me. He went from all pissed off to kinda happy and confused, like he was about to say something, but couldn't. But in the end, the guy just took off, totally surprising me. He hauled ass, like he was trying to get away from something really bad. "You good?" I turned to the girl and helped her up. She was tiny and skinny, wearing a loose dress, with her long messy hair all in her face. After I helped her up, the girl got to her feet, said thanks, and brushed her hair out of her face. She had a ton of makeup on. Her eyes were super big, but her lips were the total opposite. Her face, neck, and arms were covered in a bunch of scars, long and short. Some were still bleeding from the stuff her boyfriend did earlier. Her breath was heavy and kind of forced, like she was pulling the person in front of her deeper into a trash can. Without thinking, I covered my nose and took a step back. The girl grinned and walked up to me, saying, "Thanks a lot." My stomach did a flip. No problem. And I bolted out of there before I tossed all the In-N-Out I just ate. I got home with that awful smell still stuck in my nose and feeling sick the whole time. I jumped in the shower real quick to shake off the tiredness and gross feeling. The next day was another long one, so I decided to take the bus home instead of driving. As soon as I got on the bus, I was shocked to see the woman from yesterday. She flashed a big smile when she saw me and waved. I was gonna turn around and get off the bus, but it was too late. The doors shut and the bus took off. I picked a seat as far from that woman as I could, but her eyes were still on me, and her hand was still waving with that weird smile. Everyone else on the bus was staring and talking about me, so I figured I'd just get off at the next stop and grab a cab home. After that day, I stopped taking the bus, but that was just the start. The next few days were full of crazy, creepy obsessions. The next day at work, that girl was waiting for me right in front of the office. As soon as she spotted me from a distance, she ran over all excited and eager. I froze for a sec, totally freaking out. Why the hell is she here? Facing the girl, I tried to calm my breath and keep my face cool. "I've already said you're welcome, so we're done here. I hope this is the last time we cross paths." I just said my piece and rushed into the office before I could even catch my breath. That night when I left, I couldn't see the girl anywhere. I let out a big sigh of relief. As soon as I walked in and flipped on the light, my phone buzzed.
Hi, it's me. Come hang out for a bit.
The voice on the other end was a girl, all soft and sweet. I grabbed the phone, opened the door all confused. "Why are you here?" I said, totally surprised, while the girl just waved, all happy. Seeing the infected, gross wounds on her face totally made me feel sick. "How do you even know my address and number? Please, I'm seriously asking you to stay away from me, all right?"
What if I say no?
She challenged me with this sweet and cheerful vibe. She was getting more and more under my skin, pushing my patience to the limit. I stormed into the house and slammed the door, thinking I'd give her one last chance before calling the police. That last chance was the next day, right in front of the In-N-Out, just like the first time I ran into her. "Anthony!" She even knew my name and yelled it out. "Get lost!" I yelled, totally pissed off and fed up. The more she saw me lose it, the more she seemed to get a kick out of it, giggling and slowly getting closer. I couldn't control myself anymore, and for the first time, I actually snapped at a woman. I yanked her hair, all gross and dirty, and shouted, "Get lost! How many times do I gotta say it?" Then I went off on her just like that guy did that night, and I was the one watching it all go down. A strong shove sent me flying, and someone yelled, "Knock it off, jerk!" A young guy. I was all mixed up at first, then got pumped and ran off real quick, because I found someone to take her place. After I bounced, the girl got up, flashed a big smile at the guy, and you could see a couple more fresh scars on her face, bleeding.
I'm really into exercising and playing sports, but since I spend most of my day working, running at night seems like the best option. In an evening, after wrapping up a ton of work, I grabbed a quick snack, changed into my running gear, and headed down to the park below my apartment to blow off some steam. The park was empty at the time, but suddenly, I heard a noise behind me. I instinctively turned my head and was startled to see a tall, dark figure running behind me. I started running faster, and my heart was racing out of control. But I could feel the person behind me getting closer and closer. My mind started racing with all sorts of worst-case scenarios. The more I ran, the faster I went, all flustered and panicked, with my heart pounding so hard it was tough to breathe. Not daring to turn around, I glanced to the side and saw the person's dark shadow falling onto the road right next to me. There was a couple being intimate up ahead, so I didn't hesitate to run over and shout for help. The girl in the beautiful white dress got up and walked over to me with a surprised look on her face. I gasped, turned around, and saw someone in a tracksuit running past. "Are you okay?" the girl in the white dress asked, looking worried. Now that I looked closer, she was really beautiful. She must have been on a date with her boyfriend. I gave a shy smile and thanked her. I curiously looked toward the boyfriend, but his face was hidden in the darkness, so I couldn't see him clearly. I thanked the girl again and left. Deciding to wrap up my jog, I was shocked to realize that my phone was missing. I froze for a few seconds trying to remember, and then realized I must have dropped it while trying to escape from my pursuer. I immediately ran back the way I came to find my phone. After searching around but still not finding it, I suddenly remembered the smartwatch I was wearing. Following the signal from the watch, I headed to the children's playground. But I had never run to this area before. Moreover, it was darker than the other areas. The playground equipment looked eerie and distorted in the darkness, creating strange shapes. the wind whistling through the dry branches, the chirping of insects, and even the weird sound of footsteps echoing in the dark. All of this turned what was usually a fun and lovely area into a place of horror and fear. I checked the signal on the watch again, and it definitely showed it was here. As I got closer to the playground, I heard music playing and was relieved to have found my phone. After wandering around the slide and seesaw for a while, all I could hear was the music from the phone. I turned around to look at the two swings a few meters away. I screamed in surprise, my heart racing and my head spinning. Someone was sitting on the swing on the left. "Who is it?" I said, my voice trembling like I was about to cry. That person didn't answer. The swing kept moving back and forth, the chains creaking, and the sound of water droplets slowly dripping made my legs feel weak. It looked like a girl in a long dress, but her back was turned, so I couldn't see her face clearly. My phone rang, and it was coming from that girl. She must have picked it up. "I dropped my phone with the pink case. Have you seen it around here?" The silence was still there, and it was haunting and unsettling beyond description. I slowly approached the girl. The phone rang even louder. Suddenly, the phone fell to the ground with a loud clatter, breaking the eerie silence. My whole body jumped. I quickly ran over and grabbed the phone right at the girl's feet. Holding the phone in my hand, I didn't have time to feel relieved. The phone was covered in a thick, fishy liquid. I was hit by that horrible smell for a few seconds. Looking down at where I'd just picked up the phone, I saw drops of water still flowing down, and the girl didn't react at all. I trembled, turned on the flashlight on my phone, and shined it toward the girl. She had tears all over her face, neck, and chest, and her eyes were wide open in panic. Her red dress was soaked, and each drop of liquid slowly flowed from her feet to the ground. It was the girl who had been with her boyfriend earlier. I ran as fast as I could, putting all my strength into it. I knew I had to get out of there quickly, because that murderer could still be nearby. When I got to the security room, I collapsed and quickly told them everything in 2 sentences. The security guard and I stayed in the room until the police arrived. I told the police everything that happened, especially about that tall man. He was the top suspect in the case, but unfortunately, I couldn't see his face clearly. But on the flip side, he knew my face very well. He also knew where I was and might be lurking around. I asked the police for round-the-clock protection. I installed more security cameras, alarms, and a more modern door lock system to make sure everything was safe. For 2 months, I lived in fear and confusion and hardly left the house. By the 3rd month, the police announced they'd caught the guy while he was hiding in a neighboring state. I moved in with my parents because I felt scared and panicked whenever I was alone. I avoided all dark, dimly lit areas, parks, and even playgrounds. Once, when I went to the supermarket near my house and was playing on the counter, the cashier's eyes gave me the creeps. He was really tall, had dark skin, thick eyebrows, and was always wearing a pretty intense frown. He looked at me with a look of suspicion and anger. We've only been in this new house for a few months now. The house is out on the edge of town, not many people around, and there aren't a lot of amenities, but the air is really fresh. My room's on the 1st floor, near the living room, and my parents are upstairs. I picked this room because it's got a big window that looks out over the lake behind the house. I always leave the window open, and the breeze brings in the smell of flowers and grass, which makes me love the room even more. One night, I was up on my phone with my dog until after 2 a.m. I was watching a funny video and laughing when Pop suddenly jumped off the bed, ran to the window, and started barking like crazy. I jumped up and tried to get Pop to stop, or else my parents would wake up and realize I was still up, and they'd take my phone away. "Pop, stop it right now," I growled, but I barely whispered. At first I thought Pop was barking at his reflection in the window on the left. But when I looked again, Pop was staring angrily at the right side of the window. I took a closer look, and it was like a jolt of electricity went through me. Outside the window, a pair of blue eyes were staring right at me. It took me a few seconds to process it all, and I tried to act like everything was normal. I signaled Pop to be quiet, picked up the glass of water, and pretended it was empty. I slowly got out of bed and opened the door and went to the kitchen to get some water. "Pop, let's go get some water. You like snacks, don't you?" I swear, I had to keep my fear in check just to sound as normal as possible. I didn't even have time to worry about whether Pop was following me or not. I just rushed up to the second floor. I knocked on my parents' door over and over, freaking out and saying someone was lurking outside, probably a thief. "Calm down, Michael. I set up a sensor light. If there's any movement, the light will turn on." Dad was lying on the bed, sounding pretty calm as he answered me in a sleepy voice. When my mom heard my dad's explanation, her face relaxed too, and she let out a big sigh of relief. "Why aren't you asleep yet, Michael?" Mom suddenly switched her attitude and expression. I was startled and said, "I was thirsty, so I went to get some water. Good night, Mom and Dad." I quickly left. When I got back to the room, Pop was still sitting there, intently watching out the window. I went over and patted his head, saying, "It's nothing, buddy. Let's go to sleep." Looking out the window, everything seemed normal. I must have just been seeing things earlier. Pop was still sitting there, and I just went to bed and fell asleep pretty quickly. The next few days were normal, and I kept leaving the window open, just like before. I officially started summer vacation and planned to make a bunch of great memories with my parents and Pop in the new house. With my dad's okay, I'd often swim with Pop in the lake behind the house every afternoon. A few times I invited friends over to camp by the lake overnight, and everything went great. About 2 weeks into the vacation, one night, I stayed up late playing games with my friends. Suddenly, Pop's growling got my attention. He looked toward the window again, his eyes angry, showing his teeth and growling like he was ready to fight at any moment. I took off my headphones and said, "Pop, what's wrong this time?" I don't know why my heart was racing so fast at that moment. I looked towards the window and saw a pair of blue eyes. I stared carefully and kept looking back multiple times. But it was pretty dark outside, so I wasn't sure if I was seeing things correctly. I didn't dare to stand up and check, imagining that something terrible might happen to me. I felt pretty confident because I remembered what my dad said, but I was curious about Pop's reaction. "Michael, are you playing games again?" Mom's voice startled both me and Pop. I didn't answer because I heard noises coming from outside. Looking out the window, I was shocked to see a black shadow moving toward the lake. Pop lost it and started barking loudly. "Michael, I know what you're up to. Open the door now." I looked away from the window for a few seconds, and when I looked back, the black shadow had disappeared. I rushed to the window and looked around, but there was no one there. Mom's knocking got more and more urgent, so I ran to open the door and got a tongue lashing. But I couldn't focus on what my mom was saying, as I kept glancing toward the window, and the shadow of that creature seemed to linger in my mind. The next morning, I went to find my dad and told him everything with a real serious look. My dad was skeptical about what I said, so he decided to check the sensor light, and it had been broken for a while. The thought of some weird creature following me so many times really shook me up. I went into detail with my parents about its eyes and appearance, and how it suddenly vanished near the lake. Is it possible you were just hallucinating because you stayed up too late playing games, Michael? Mom's question made my dad hesitate and look at me with a questioning look. But Pop, how could a dog's senses be wrong? I immediately argued back, and my parents just looked at each other in silence and didn't say anything more. From that day on, I kept the windows shut and the curtains drawn all the time. My dad also installed a bunch of sensor lights and alarm bells around the house, just like I wanted. But I still couldn't relax and ended up dealing with constant insomnia. Seeing that my physical and mental health was getting worse, my parents took me to see a psychologist. The police also came by several times at night to search the house, but they didn't find anything unusual. One day, I suggested to my parents that we move to a different place. That same day, the local news reported that they'd finally arrested a thief who had been on the run for months. He'd committed a total of 36 robberies, and what stood out to me were his striking blue eyes. My parents thought it was very likely that I had seen him, but I still wasn't completely satisfied and didn't feel fully reassured. Following my wishes again, my parents decided to fill in the pond behind the house and build a big warehouse. While draining the pond, they found a bag and a mask that thieves often use. So, he probably jumped into the pond to escape that night. Since the pond wasn't very deep and he was tall, it makes sense he could have done that. I slept better and made sure to lock the door carefully every time. Luckily, I had Pop, a big and brave dog.
Mm-hmm.